Hello and welcome to the latest installment of the Cannabusiness Key. I am your host, Jason Klein. I am here with a fantastic guest today, Eric Steenstra from Vote Hemp. We're going to be talking about recent developments, or in some cases, lack thereof, recent developments in the implementation of the 2018 Farm Bill. We've had Eric on on this series, in the Cannabusiness Key series, several times in the past, and we're very lucky to have him returning with us today to talk about where everything stands here in February of 2021. I am very much appreciative for everybody who's joining. I see a lot of people logging in right now. We are on a new format. I am recently moved over to a new firm called Ramon, and I'm going to show you a couple of quick things about Ramon here. But we are also using a new platform, the Ring Central platform, which is going to be a little different look for those of you who've joined the webinar in the past. We've got a little wrinkle as far as the technology. So I hope this goes smoothly today, and please give us a little bit of feedback, and if there's anything that can be improved, we'd be very much appreciative of what your experience is like on your end. The biggest thing to note as far as the difference of technology is the chat window. For those of you who have attended before, you know that I encourage you to type in questions for Eric and I during the presentation. I'm going to be monitoring the chat window for your questions, and we'll be lobbing them over to Eric as we go. So please noodle around there on your Ring Central toolbar, find the chat window, send me a chat. If you want to send it to the whole group, you're more than welcome. But I think the best way to sort of keep the conversation focused would be to send me your questions, and I will then pass them along to Eric as we have this conversation. This is meant to be interactive, and we're going to have a lot of fun. So let's jump right into it. We've got always, of course, first a disclaimer, right? We're going to be talking about hemp today. Hemp is a form of cannabis, a Latin term that covers both marijuana and hemp. And as many people who are on this call here know, hemp is not the same as marijuana. It's generally going to have a lower threshold of THC. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But we're not here to talk to you about how to break the federal law or how to violate any laws. In fact, we're not here even giving you any legal advice. We're here, this is an educational event. We're not creating an attorney-client relationship. And we're going to be talking primarily about how to comply with the law and what the law means and where the regulations stand and all that stuff. So if you have any questions about a disclaimer like this, you can ask me. Okay, so a little bit about Ramon, my new home here at Ramon. It's a fantastic firm. I'd really encourage you, if you're looking for legal counsel in a wide range of matters, geographies. Ramon is a very innovative firm. It's a place full of fantastic lawyers, maybe myself excluded in that group, but it has been growing very, very quickly. It grew dramatically in 2020. And I'm learning here now, about 4 months into joining the firm, what a great place it is for lawyers to operate because we have great colleagues, and really a great place for clients to be. It's a innovative place, and for innovative companies, it's a great fit. So if you're looking for a firm that matches your level of collaboration, it matches your level of dynamic growth, certainly Ramon is a great place to be. You can see here, there are new offices, Ramon offices coming online all the time. I suspect by the end of 2021, this map's going to have at least a couple more stars on it. So please, if you're interested, go take a look at the website. ramonlaw.com. Send me an email. Be happy to tell you about how things work when you engage with us here at Ramon. Okay, so I'm going to also mention one more thing. Now that we are back with the Cannabusiness Key, we are going to be continuing to host these events on a monthly basis, sort of back to our normal schedule. So the normal schedule is Fridays at noon Eastern time. They're always going to be Friday at noon Eastern time. They're going to move around in the month a little bit. We're going to try to space them out as best we can. But we've already got a bunch of guests lined up for 2020. It's going to be a great season. We're going to be focusing on, of course, actionable information that's useful to cannabis executives. Okay, so hemp and marijuana are all going to be covered. But our target audience, people like you who are logged in today, we're trying to give you actionable, useful information that you can use in your business to streamline your business, to improve your business, new business opportunities, all that sort of thing, the things that you need to know. So take a look at the Cannabis Business Executive, our fantastic partner in hosting and promoting these webinars. Check out the webinar tab in that at cannabisbusinessexecutive.com for upcoming events. Check out the Ramon website for the upcoming schedule. You can register through either of those two places. And maybe you see one that you like that's lined up for July. We're going to try to get these notices out to you with a little bit more advanced planning so that you can sign up, not just weeks or days in advance, but months in advance. And as always, if you are interested in joining as a featured guest, or if you know somebody or you have a topic that you'd really like to talk about, I'm all ears. Send me an email, jason.klein@ramonlaw.com, or give me a call and we can talk about it. I'd love to have your feedback on all this stuff. So the March webinar is going to be on March 26th. Let me just confirm that. Yes, March 26th, and we're going to be hosting Leslie Engel King. She's the executive of Focus Standards. It's a standards organization that has been serving the cannabis industry for many, many years. Focus Standards is going to be talking about how to turn quality standards into a business model. We all know a lot of customers, patients are out there and look for quality. What does that mean? What does quality? What constitutes quality? How do you develop quality into your brand and convey quality to your customers? So it's going to be a really interesting conversation. Again, that's March 26th. Please sign up, RSVP. If you can join us in person, that'd be great. If you can't, or you can only join for a few minutes, that's fine too. We'll be recording all these webinars and we'll be sending you links to those recordings afterwards, so you can watch it at your convenience. Okay, that's it for all the housekeeping. A little bit long today. Sorry about this going on and on, but here we are. We're finally ready to host Eric Steenstra, Vote Hemp. And Eric, as people who've been on here know, has a long history, very long history in the cannabis industry. He is truly a pioneer in cannabis and hemp. Back in 1992, he started a hemp lifestyle and clothing brand called Ecolution with Steve D'Angelo, and has been involved in many different aspects of this industry for years, including for several decades on the advocacy side, advocating for increased access to and use of hemp products in the United States. For the last several years, he's been instrumental in the development, the passage and the development of the 2018 Farm Bill. He's remained very closely tied in with the agencies who are continuing to roll out these proposed and final rules. And so that's what we're going to be talking to Eric about today, where this all stands. Eric, it looks like you're unmuted, and welcome to the podcast, webinar today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jason.
So Eric, let's jump right into it. We are in a position here in February of 2021 where we have a final set of rules from the USDA, which has been promulgated, not yet quite effective. We're sort of in this in-between date, but maybe you can tell us about some of the really sort of big picture key items here, and we can talk about where these final rules, or what people can expect out of these USDA final rules around growing hemp in their states.
Yeah, happy to talk about that. So this is something that people in the industry, especially farmers and a lot of the regulators, have been waiting for some time now. The USDA initially promulgated an interim final rule in October of 2019 and allowed for comments throughout that period as people began to grow hemp. A number of the states and tribes that were approved to grow by the USDA. Some of them continued to operate under the old 2018 Farm Bill rules, which were a little bit more lenient, shall we say. And so in any case, the USDA has accepted all this feedback, and they published a final rule in January, and it's set to be effective starting in March. And there'll be a number of places where people will be operating under that rule this year. Some have opted to wait a little longer, but overall, we felt that it's a pretty positive, rule that the USDA tried pretty hard to listen to what the industry was saying. I know we didn't get everything that we had, had asked for, but some of the highlights are, first off, it's important to note that the USDA did get a lot of feedback about the 0.3 THC definition. They do not have any authority to change that. That was something that was defined by Congress, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But so there's no changes to that. One big thing that they did do was that there was a window established in the original interim final rule of 15 days between the time that your sample was taken and the time that you could harvest your crop. And that wasn't a lot of time, especially given that there were so many people that were doing that, and it took some time for the tests to come in. And there were also concerns, about the limits on THC, because in the rules there's the 0.3 limit, but then there's what's determined as the final acceptable THC level, and so there's a lot of things that go into that. And so the sampling to harvest window was extended to 30 days. We think that's a very positive development and that's great. They offered some sampling method flexibility to states and tribes. In other words, they're not dictating that only one process can be used, and they're allowing people to propose alternatives. And they basically said, as long as it meets their sort of what I call their 95 to 1 rule, and that is 95% assurance that no more than 1% of your crop has more than 0.3. That's how they define it in the rule. So, but there is some flexibility there. Another thing that changed was that they had a standard for negligent violations, that any crop that was over 0.5% of THC would be looked at as a negligent violation. We thought that was too low, significantly too low, and they have increased that to 1% THC. And you can only have one violation. Even if you have multiple sort of fields or whatever, they're not going to count multiple violations in one season.
Hey, Eric,
yep.
Can we pause here for a minute and just talk about this? Because I think this is an area which can be a little confusing.
Mm-hmm.
The negligent violation, as I understand it, and maybe you can add a little color into this. So what we have here is there's a threshold, right? The 0.3 threshold of THC concentration. We can talk about how that test is done and what is counted in 0.3% THC and THCA and Delta-9, various methodology there. But let's just put that aside for a moment, and let's just talk about, the hemp needs to test below 0.3%. But then there's this window above which, if it tests above 0.3%, it needs to be destroyed. And there are instructions and guidance on how to destroy the crop. However, if it's above 0.3% but below 1%, it is presumed not to be a negligent violation. And what that means is you've created a hot plant, too much THC, but you haven't done anything wrong, so to speak. There are normal variations in the genetics of the seeds, in the growing season, in the geography of the place, and in the way a plant grows that are sort of out of the control of the farmer. And from the farmer's perspective, they could have, genetics. They could have seeds which grew hemp at, below the 3.3% threshold in some other place, and then they plant them on their farm, or, one season and they plant the same genetics again the next season, and it could go over the 0.3 threshold. And so this is why the concept of a 1% THC threshold for a negligent violation is important, right? Because
exactly,
below 1%, you're still not presumed to have done anything wrong. Above 1%, though, you can and likely will be dinged as having committed a negligent violation, and that could be really problematic for some farmers.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that the USDA has in their rules is that if you have 3 negligent violations, three seasons of negligent violations, you could be precluded from growing hemp in the future. So that's there's a risk there, and it's generally anything under 1%, you're presumed to really have just sort of done nothing wrong and just had your crop go a little high, but yeah, the over 1% is a different standard there.
Right. Yeah. So let's say, for example, we've got a farmer with 100 acres of hemp being grown, and they begin testing it towards the end of the season, or get all the way through their season and realize, well, this is above the 0.3 threshold. Now they're obviously obligated to destroy it. And again, we can talk about what that process involves, the guidelines for that. But if it's below 1%, they can destroy it and maybe make an insurance claim, right? Because they may have insurance coverage or something like this. And if it's below 1%, that may very well be claimable on their insurance and covered. On the other hand, if it's above 1% and it's deemed to be a negligent violation, we haven't quite gotten there yet with all these insurance companies, but I'm going to assume, knowing how insurance companies work, they are not paying out that they're not paying out that claim because you will have been deemed to be negligent in your growing of that crop. And so that's going to be a basis. That's going to be a big, important thing. Even if it's just getting dinged once, it could really create a black mark on your insurance. You could also lose banking relationships as a result, because a lot of banks, credit unions, require that you show that you have ongoing compliance with the rules. So it is important, even though there's some wiggle room in here above the 0.3% to 1%. It's still very important that farmers are careful not to go above that 1%, because there can be other really negative side effects of that.
It's a great point, Jason. Absolutely. We think it is a positive. I think it's a positive that they moved it up, but it is there are some significant potential repercussions if you do grow a crop that's over that negligence threshold.
Right. So I have a question here from Catherine. So she asks if is the negligent violation provided for a crop not meet the 0.3% if it stays below 1%? The answer here is yes. There's no negligent violation if the testing results are 1% or below. The negligent violation only comes into effect if it's a 1% THC or above. And as I've referenced now a few times, there is some instruction in this latest guidance from the USDA about how to what constitutes THC for the purpose of calculating this threshold. Eric, maybe you can just speak for a minute. I'm not sure if it's further down our slide deck, but there's some discussion in the latest rule, in the latest USDA rule, about Delta 9 THC versus THCA and the testing methodology. And my understanding, again, is that it's basically a cumulative, a combination of THC and THCA, which is added up to determine that percentage of THC that's present. It's not just the THC. It also includes THCA. Is that right, Eric?
That's correct. Yeah. So the USDA refers to what they call total THC, and the basis for that is that the Farm Bill, 2018 Farm Bill, says that hemp should be measured, or THC should be measured on a post-decarboxylation. And so when you're measuring, there's different testing methodologies, some of which that will heat the plant material and automatically decarboxylate it. And then there's other ones that don't. And so when you don't heat it or allow it to cure first, it's going to have not only Delta 9, but THCA or THC acid, as you mentioned. And so what the USDA requires is that they calculate that in there as being the total THC. And there's a molecular weight to that, which is lower. So THCA actually converts at a lower rate. There's some just debate about what that conversion rate actually is. But sort of on a molecular weight level, it's 0.87% of its weight becomes Delta 9. So there's a lengthy thing in the final rule that explains that, how labs should go about calculating that. But ultimately, that's part of the reason why some of the states have stuck with the 2014 Farm Bill this long, because the rules on Delta 9 were a little more less stringent, and they just looked at Delta 9. They didn't worry about THCA. So that's something that will be changing in the this new rule.
Yeah, that's right. So, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that DEA lab requirement, which was very controversial as in the development of the USDA rule, and so and that's been kicked down the road a little bit. So, and that's a little different. We still need to go through testing for all these hemp products, but the enhanced lab requirements were pushed out for a couple of years. We have a question from David who's asked, is a great question. If you're deemed to be negligent, if you're above 1%, is that sort of per se a crime as viewed by the DEA? It's a great question. The final rule, the USDA final rule says, no, it is not, but the USDA is not your prosecutor. It certainly could become a basis for criminal penalties or prosecution by an enforcement agency, right? And that could be a state, a local enforcement agency, or a federal enforcement agency. We're not sure yet how the Department of Justice will look at something like that. Now, certainly, this is an entire whole nother webinar, right? But if we were to talk about what you're required to do, if you're above 0.3%, you're required to destroy the crop. It's just that simple. So if you have a crop that is deemed to be a negligent violation above 1%, and you don't destroy it, and you're moving it around in interstate commerce or even intrastate commerce, that would probably be something that would catch the attention of a prosecutor faster than just simply growing hot hemp that you then destroy. David, I know that's maybe not the most satisfying answer. We don't have a definitive answer on this yet. We're going to see what happens this year. I anticipate there won't be a ton of farmers in this negligent violation category because of like what we talked about before. Most farmers are going to be using reliable genetics, and that's going to, generally keep you below that 1% threshold. Is that your understanding too, Eric? I mean, do you think that we're going to have a lot of negligent violations in this upcoming season?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that the data out there, I've talked to several labs on this, and, they look at, lots of different samples, and they're testing them. And from what I've heard, it's, maybe even under 1% or a very small number of the samples that come in over 1%. So, that hasn't been a significant problem. I think that probably a criminal violation would be more likely if it appeared that somebody was actually growing, high THC cannabis, something, 10% or more. But there's no standard for it. They could charge you with the crime, as you mentioned. It's really up to the local prosecutors and how they view it. And I think they would probably look at intent. What was did you try to to actually purchase a variety of hemp genetics that were you believed were going to be compliant.
So, Eric, while we're talking about all this, designation of hot hemp and testing and what you do with it, the USDA Final Rule also provides for some more flexible sample collection and timing of the sample collection. Can you just talk for a moment about the 15-day window on sampling and harvest time and how that was extended, and what that may mean for farmers?
Yeah, well, I mean, it certainly means that they have more flexibility about when they're going to harvest their crop. They can request the state to come out when they anticipate they're in that 30-day window, and then when it's actually sampled, they still have that 30 days. So it's a lot more flexibility. There's a lot of things that go into that. But one other thing it also impacts, I think, will be ultimately, it provides more flexibility in what is deemed a compliant or acceptable THC level crop, because THC does increase over time until you harvest typically. So, if you're sampling it at 30 days beforehand, it may get, may go a little higher. Ultimately, it still doesn't impact the, what level of THC is allowed in final products. It's still deemed to be 0.3, but I think overall that 30-day window is going to help people. And then the sampling process was another concern that a lot of people expressed initially, that we're only testing the top few inches of the plant. And Vote Hemp actually presented some data from the Institute for Advanced Learning and Research, where they tested all three. They divided the flowering parts of the crop up into thirds, top, middle, and bottom, and they tested it, and you could see that the levels vary, and it gets lower as you get lower onto the crop. So we urge them to test all the flowering material and homogenize that. And they've provided, they did improve that somewhat, not as much as we thought, but they did provide some flexibility too for people to come up with their own sampling methodology protocol to propose to USDA. So, it's a step in the right direction. We may still be able to work towards some additional, things beyond that, but I think it was helpful.
And you've got a note here down at the bottom of this page about some flexibility in developing unique sampling requirements, sort of for states and tribes that have USDA approved programs, right? So there's also built into the final rule here some flexibility for those places to say, here in our state or in our tribal land, we're going to do things a little bit differently than they do elsewhere.
That's right. USDA is trying to provide flexibility and allow people to propose different things. They're still going to look at them to make sure that they feel like they meet the sort of overall goals. But it's not going to be a one size all fits all situation.
This is this is still within the context of a USDA approved plan, right? That's so right. From the framework here is that the USDA sets out some standards of their own. States and tribes can come up with their own standards. Those standards need to be approved by the USDA, and they can differ from the USDA Final Rule. So you need to understand what your local jurisdiction and your tribal land allows for and provides for. And this final rule from the USDA specifically says, with regard to sampling, that states can develop performance-based approaches to sampling. So, for example, you can have a state program that takes into consideration seed certification programs, right? So if you use seeds that are certified and the genetics that are certified, you may be able to incorporate that into your sampling program for your state, or history of producer compliance, and other kinds of factors like that, which may sort of allow states to give farmers a little bit more freedom in what they're doing, and presumption of staying within the guidelines.
Yeah, that's right.
Great. Well, Eric, we still have a bit more to get through. Do you mind if I flip to the next page?
No, sounds good.
Great. All right. So yeah, well, this goes to the big topic here, which is no farmers want to spend all this time and money and effort and opportunity to grow a big field of hemp only to have to destroy it. And we have seen, 12%. I mean, these are big numbers. Maybe we can talk about what you expect, what you've seen in the last couple of years, Eric, and what you expect to happen as far as hot crops for the next, with this, under this new USDA final rule.
Yeah, it's a significant problem. Our attitude is we don't want to ever have to see a farmer destroy their crops, and we think most farmers should go into this with the right approach. They're trying to do the right thing. They want to grow a crop that they can harvest and successfully sell. So the last thing they want is to have a so-called hot crop. But in looking at the data that's out there, USDA and in this rule they actually mentioned this specific statistic. Of course, it's a small percentage of the overall acreage that they're reporting on, but still, I think it gives a good representation that they had over 730 out of 6,166 acres, which were disposed of or destroyed. And so that's a lot of acres. And if you extrapolate that over 200 some thousand that were grown, that's a lot of hemp that, farmers that were hurt, and a lot of hemp that was destroyed. And we don't really want to see that happen. Even in Arizona, there's one story I put on there. They reported a couple of years ago that, it was the 2019 growing season, that 40% of the crops there. So we know it varies some from state to state. Environmental conditions can affect that. Maybe Arizona, with its hot climate and whatnot, could have been a factor there. I'm not sure what all went into that. But in any case, farmers are being hurt by this. So that's one of our big concerns, and something that we, I also want to mention that in addition to losing your crop and all the money you put into it, they often make you pay for the cost of destroying it. And the University of Kentucky just put out a study on that, and it adds a sort of insult to injury there, that you have to then go out and turn your crop under. Or there's several different methods that are allowed under the USDA that you can find on their website. But in any case, yeah, so it's a bad situation, and we really want to see the definition changed. I'll talk a lot about that in the next slide, but talk about the definition being changed to try to make sure that few or no farmers ideally will lose their crop.
Hey, Eric, I had a really good question here in the Q&A tab, and for everybody, we've got both a chat tab and a Q&A tab in your Ring Central toolbar. I'm not sure which one I like more just yet. This is my first time using this technology. So I just noticed there were a couple of questions on the Q&A tab. Mark has a good question about, now that we've got a final rule for the 2018 Farm Bill from the USDA, what about states that are still operating under the 2014 program and sunsetting of those rules? Do they still apply? If we have a state that doesn't have a USDA approved program, is there a pathway for them to still grow and harvest hemp in their state?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's been extended a couple of times. So last year we had a number of states, quite a few states, that kept the 2014 Farm Bill program rules, and it was supposed to sunset after last season, but the USDA did extend that. And so there's an opportunity, and a number of states are still continuing with that 2014 program this year. And so, but this is my understanding, unless it was somehow extended again, that this will be the last season, and it's only certain states. And so you really have to go to your state to double check. I couldn't give you a sort of comprehensive list of who's doing it and who's not. But actually the USDA does have a list of who has approved plans and who's operating under what system as well. So, but that's so that's something that will be going away. Looks like after this season.
And I don't have the exact number either, but it's my understanding there are more states than not that have the USDA approved programs under the 2018 bill. Is that right? We're at a majority of states at this point.
Yeah, there's
the other tribal lands as well.
That's right. There's quite a few states that have gotten approved plans. There are some that have approved plans that have deferred, that have the plan approved but are operating under the older regime for one more season, that type of thing. But generally, yeah, you're right. And there's quite a few tribes as well. I think a few dozen tribes that have either plans already approved or under consideration. So, soon we're going to see. I mean, I think by next season we're going to see approved plans in every state. Idaho's the only one that hasn't legalized it under state law. So we have 49 states that have laws that allow for hemp to be grown.
Right. Get with the program, Idaho. All of you people from Idaho on this webinar today. Talk to your elected officials, because that's not a good group to be in, a group of one left out at the party. We have a question here from Dennis in the Q&A tab about sampling. Are you required to use an authorized agent to take samples, or can the farmer themselves do the sampling and sort of start that process?
So of course, a farmer can always take samples of their own crop to test it on their own. But in terms of what the USDA compliance requires, generally that requires somebody who has been trained in the USDA sampling process. And usually it's going to be somebody that's approved by either the state or the tribe that has that training, that's going to actually go out and do the sampling. So that's my understanding. There are a couple of states, by the way, that have opted out of regulating this. For example, New Hampshire, as an example, is one where, and the USDA will actually regulate hemp production in New Hampshire, for example, where they'll go out, you apply directly to USDA and they'll take care of everything. So just to add that into the mix, but most states are sticking with their own regulatory program.
Sure, great. All right, wonderful. Well, let's keep some momentum here. It is let's see, about 20 minutes till the end, until our time is up, and we've got 3 or 4 more slides to get through. So this is a little bit more forward-looking here, Eric. Can you just talk about the Paul bill?
Absolutely, yeah. So we talked a little bit about the limit on THC, currently at 0.3% THC. And so Senator Paul has heard from a number of farmers in Kentucky with concerns about that definition, as well as some other concerns. And so late last year, he introduced the Hemp Act, and it does a few different things, but the number one thing, and we, Vote Hemp stepped up and sort of endorsed that legislation when it came out. But the number one effect that it's going to have is to increase the level of THC, or limit of THC in hemp, to 1%. It has to be reintroduced this session, but we're expecting that Senator Paul is going to do that, and we're glad that he was sort of the first one to kind of get this going, and to put it on on the table as a something that he'd like to see happen. We hope that it will be included in some legislation, potentially legislation before the next Farm Bill, I would hope, but it's possible it may take until the next Farm Bill before we get it. We're not sure what the path is going to be, but so we think that the Paul legislation is important, and we'll continue to support that. We also have a petition, by the way. Vote Hemp has a petition on our website. We've been collecting signatures. We already have over 7,000 signatures from people about supporting this 1%. We will be delivering that results of that to the members of Congress so that they can see that there's broad support for this.
Well, that's a great action item for everybody on this webinar right now or watching this later. Go over to the Vote Hemp website and sign that petition. Let's see if we can, get the definition of hemp up to 1% THC. That would be, in my opinion, the most important part of that would be allowing for the innovation, right? As hemp becomes more and more popular, and derivatives of hemp become more popular, and more applications become more commercially accessible, we need to have some innovation and some room for flexibility. And innovation's awfully tough when you are stifled with too low of a limit. So it'd be great to see that 1% threshold being brought into federal law. Eric, I'm going to flip now to the next page. We're going to talk just very quickly here about the FDA, the FTC, some of the issues in the marketplace. We've been talking about growing hemp, and the USDA has actually done an admirable job of bringing final regulations, and it's taken 1.5 years, but here we are. And but what about the other agencies? Where's the FDA and the FTC? And everybody knows there's tons of hemp derived CBD products in the marketplace. You can go just about anywhere, any place, and find some CBD products from hemp. And but meanwhile, we've had sort of lack of regulation from the FTC and from the FDA in particular, really notably. So can you just talk for a moment about where we've been, where we're going with those agencies?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really significant situation. The FDA regulates foods, drugs, and of course dietary supplements and cosmetics. And so a lot of the CBD products that are on the market fall under FDA's purview. And Congress did say that hemp is still subject to regulation under the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, and which is fine. We think that the problem with the FDA has been that instead of just sort of applying the existing regulations that they have, so that's safe to dietary supplements, which is a lot of the products out there, they don't need to reinvent the wheel here. They have spent 2 years. I think they had a hearing almost 2 years ago, and they've been just basically taking their time and studying this. In the meantime, as you mentioned, there's literally tens of thousands of outlets all over the country. You can find CBD products everywhere, and the FDA is not actually applying really their regulations. The only thing they've really acted on is when people make unqualified health claims. In other words, you're claiming that it can treat or cure a disease or some kind of condition, and you generally can't do that. It's not just a hemp thing, but with any supplement or drug product, you have to have evidence or approval process for that. So they have sent out warning letters to a number of companies on that. But short of that, otherwise the market has essentially been unregulated. And we see, unfortunately, we see some great products out there, but we also see some products that really shouldn't be on the market, that weren't produced using, say, good manufacturing practices. They're not properly labeled, or they're not following other sort of existing federal guidelines. So it's a huge problem, and it's keeping hemp out of some other outlets. Some of the mainstream retailers have not carried the hemp products yet because of this gray area and the concern with FDA.
My old friend Laura asked if we could provide a link to the Vote Hemp petition, the 1% petition, which I just did in the chat. Okay. So if you go into the webinar chat, now you will see a link for me. Everybody should now have it, and we'll make sure that we'll send that out in an email as well, so everybody can sort of go over there and sign that petition. Eric, we're down to about 15 minutes left, so let's continue sort of moving through, and now would be a good time if you have more questions to start getting them loaded in to the chat or the Q&A, whichever one's easier for you. So we had talked briefly about these, the FDA in particular is particularly interesting to me, the FDA's role in this, in regulating CBD, right? Because of the explosion in popularity in CBD for human consumption over the last couple of years. Obviously, the FDA, which regulates food and drugs, and cosmetics and all sorts of things like that, they have a say in the claims that these products make, the labels, the way they're marketed, the way they're produced, and we have seen all sorts of warning letters over the last couple of years about companies making unsubstantiated claims to treat or cure certain diseases, right? So we all know that you can't say, for example, CBD is going to cure cancer. That is going to get the attention of the FDA. But meanwhile, so we sort of know what you can't do or have an idea of what can't be done. Meanwhile, the rest of the guidance from the FDA is just all over the place. So, what are hemp producers and marketers supposed to do to stay sort of in the bounds of, or away from the attention of the FDA for violations in the absence of clear guidance?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I'd say the number one thing to do would probably, if you're marketing hemp, hemp supplements or foods or any of those products, first off, get yourself a good attorney that has some experience, with working with the FDA and understands those regulations that can give you legal advice on that. I think that's important. But I think that the FDA does have these guidelines are clearly published right on their website. There's a lot of requirements in there. So to get into that space, it's you have to learn the space. You have to learn about the proper labeling, the proper they have, for example, good manufacturing practices, and manufacturers have to follow those practices or use a contractor that is certified to follow those practices. That's all just to make sure that the products that get to consumers are safe, that they're produced in a safe and clean way, and that they're documented, that kind of thing. So I'd say that's the critical piece. Like with any business, you really have to look at compliance as an important part of your business, especially if you're working in the foods and supplement space.
Absolutely. And just because you see other people making claims doesn't mean you can do it without consequence, right? The metaphor analogy I use is you hop on the highway and you see other people breaking the speed limit. Doesn't mean simply that you can do it. It may mean that they're going to get pulled over down the road, or maybe they'll get away with it. But it doesn't mean that you won't be pulled over. So a common sort of response when I talk to companies that are marketing hemp products that, hey, how come I can't do this? Joe Schmo down the road, he's doing it, he's saying it. Well, maybe he's getting away with it for right now, or maybe he will get away with it forever, but that does not mean that you have, that's not a defense. Somebody else is doing it. That guy was speeding. That's not a defense to you speeding. And so, I just want to sort of emphasize that point. Compliance is the only safe harbor.
Yeah. Last thing you want to do is get a letter from the FDA or the Federal Trade Commission saying that you violated some regulations. So yeah, be proactive.
Meanwhile, we do have plenty of criticisms of how the FDA has handled, or failed to, address the issues that are out there. Now, we all know the FDA approved Epidiolex a while back, so they do have a recognition of, or sort of growing recognition of the health benefit to components of cannabis. But that being said, they really haven't done very much with respect to, dealing with all of the CBD products that are out there in the marketplace. The Farm Bill specifically preserves the FDA's authority to regulate products under the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act. And that's a really important thing, because it means that we all have to sit around and wait for the FDA to get their act together. And, you know, unless the statute changes. So, you know, we can't go and sort of say the FDA is not doing it. We're going to, you know, allow the states to regulate it, for example. The Farm Bill says the FDA has the authority. So where are we at now? And do you see any major progress happening in 2021 with respect to CBD regulation by the FDA?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I'd like to say that I'm hopeful that something can happen this year, but so far our experience isn't leading me to that conclusion. So late last year, the FDA did submit a regulatory guidance proposal to the Office of Management Budget. Normally, any type of regulatory piece that's going to get published or finalized goes through the Office of Management Budget for review. And during that process, they had an ability for people to have a consult, and we did reach out and had a call with OMB, including staff from FDA and the Drug Czar's office, and provided feedback. And unfortunately, we don't know what was in that, because those are kept it's kept private until it's published. But you're able to generally comment on it. And in any case, then with the change of the administrations, that regulation was pulled by the FDA. As the Biden administration came in. So we really haven't gotten any closer to that. There is some legislation that was recently introduced by Representative Schrader that might be able to help, but that was in the last session. It's hard to say what its prospects are in 2021. And so yeah, it's a frustrating situation right now. We really want to see FDA act, and yet all the data that's out there largely talks about how safe CBD is. There's some very limited data from the Epidiolex trials showing that there's the potential, say, for liver toxicity at extremely high dosages. What we see from FDA is that all they really talk about is their concerns about CBD, not about the benefits, or the fact that their failure to sort of provide guidance and regulation to the marketplace now is actually harming consumers, and that there's products out there that are, on the market that really haven't been checked to be compliant with these regulations. So,
yeah, there's a lot of noise in the system, right? So, and I hear this a lot just from friends and family who say, hey, I go over to my local store and there's all these different products that are out there. How do I know which one is good, or would be good for me, or which one is safe? And that really goes to the FDA's failure to step up and create some clear guidance for people. And what it means is that there's I'm not going to suggest that there's a lot of products that are out there that are really dangerous, or that are going to be terribly problematic, but I think there's a lot of products that are probably ineffective. It may not contain what it says they contain by way of CBD and things like that. It's it would be better if we had a federal regulator who's clearly instructed under this Farm Bill that did their job.
Yeah, sometimes failure to act can be more harmful than FDA just takes a very long time with, I think, anything they do. So.
Right. All right. So let's move on. We've got to wrap this up. We've got, 5 minutes left. So we've provided here a few links, which everybody's going to be getting this presentation. And we're also going to add in fact, I will send back out to the whole group in the webinar chat right now the link to Vote Hemp petition, just in case you missed it, back into your, excuse me, I'm going to send that to the wrong group. Let me send it one more time. Everybody should go over to the Vote Hemp website and sign this petition for sure. Everybody is also going to be getting a copy of this presentation in their email, the email that they signed up with. And this has got some great links here on some of the USDA rules. We had talked about remediation and disposal guidelines, or at least reference them. We didn't talk in a lot of detail. So go check out the remediation. There is a process for remediating a hot test. So you're not necessarily obligated in the first instance to destroy everything, but you can have a remediation option. And then the FDA put out a page on Q&A, cannabis, CBD. It doesn't have a ton of new information in there, but it's a great resource if you're looking to try to get some questions answered about how to market a CBD, hemp-derived CBD product. Of course, if you have specific questions for your business about marketing hemp, growing hemp, distributing, manufacturing, all these sort of things, I would encourage you to talk to a lawyer. I would be a great resource for you, and my firm's got fantastic hemp experience. But find a lawyer that you're comfortable with, that fits your business and your business needs, and go out and ask them, how you comply with these somewhat confusing set of rules and regulations. I encourage you as well to go, like we said, go to Vote Hemp, but email Eric if you want to be more involved in the advocacy for the hemp industry, for a more friendly business operating environment for hemp businesses. Eric's a great place to start. So I'd really encourage you to get in touch with him and find out more about that program and what's going on the Hill. As a final reminder as well, we're going to be back here March 26th with Leslie Engelking from Focus Standards, and we're going to be talking about creating building quality standards into your business and into your product that you sell to customers and patients. Go check out the Cannabis Business Executive for all sorts of great content that may be relevant to you and of interest to your business, and for future webinars as well. Gosh, with that, Eric, I think we are just about wrapped. Thank you so much for joining us. This is fascinating as always, and thanks for all the great content.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks to everyone for attending today.
Wonderful. Well, we will see you again soon. Have a wonderful weekend, and thanks for joining. Bye-bye.